Homelessness in Southern California. It is a crisis that seems to have so many questions and too few answers. A new report due out at the end of the month is likely to show very little progress has been made, even though Los Angeles spent more than $600 million last year to address it. LA Times reporter Gail Holland has written about it. Hi, Gail. Thanks for coming in.
Lisa, thank you.
Tell us about this report that's coming out, what you expect to see.
Well, the report is the official homeless count, and it's required by the federal government in order to get federal funding, which used to be the only funding we really had. But at this point, the city and the county, and basically us, the taxpayers, have approved actually billions of dollars over 10 years to build homeless housing and provide services to keep people in the housing and help them get into the housing. And thus far, we've had funding for almost 2 years, and it just hasn't seemed to really make a dent. And so the officials in the past few weeks have been having meetings where they're obviously getting prepared for bad news.
Remind us what point-in-time count means and how many homeless people we think we have out on the street right now in LA County.
Well, our last count was 53,000. And point in time means they go out and survey homeless people and actually count them in the tents, in the cars, in the RVs, and try and figure out how many people are homeless, as well as the people that are in the shelters. And the count is expected to go up.
Every time we see these numbers, we as voters go to the polls and try to do something to help. Proposition H and HHH, remind us what those are and how much money has been spent and if it's making a dent.
Well, HHH is the city's housing bond measure that we approved, and that money is on the street. They are building things, but they haven't opened yet. The services, however, the county last year spent $177 million. They have a sales tax that we also approved.
The head of homeless services in LA has told the supervisors that we just can't keep up. As, you know, we move people into shelters or try to get them from shelters into permanent housing, but more people end up homeless every single day. The homeless population and the homeless problem is completely intertwined with the lack of affordable housing, right?
And the rent hikes. I think there's a few ways to look at it. One is that they do have short-term strategies, and one of them is to pay for people to move into apartments, just regular apartments, for a short amount of time on the assumption that they'll be able to increase their income and then pick up the rent themselves. Those are among the tens of thousands of people. They're counting those as people they've quote-unquote housed. But the only reason they know whether that person stayed in that housing or not, or is still off the street rather than has returned to a tent, is if they go back to the homeless authorities and ask for more help.
But there are some successes. I mean, we have moved some people in the last 18 months. How many did they say have been moved from?
27,000.
27,000.
Yeah, it's a lot. Many experts are really question how many of those are still inside. Mm-hmm. And some of the real short-term strategies may be going to help people who would have otherwise been able to help themselves, you know, couch surfed and that kind of thing. Because a lot of people who run homeless services say that the people that we all see day in and day out see the same people, and it's like those really difficult to house people,
right,
they don't seem to be getting to them. Also, some of their short-term programs, like they were trying to open parking lots so people in RVs would have a place to sleep at night.
And cars.
And cars, exactly. And thus far, they only have slots for 200 people.
Critics say that we haven't been strategic enough in the way we approach the problem. What does Mayor Garcetti say?
Well, Mayor Garcetti says that we are housing tens of thousands of people and that we knew it would take a long time to make a significant dent. One thing people don't, I think, understand is that you don't just get handed like keys to an apartment.
Right.
You have to go through a really long process and generate an income to pay the rent. And right now it's taking 215 days for a person after they've already lined up in the queue for those who qualify to get housing.
And that's not even considering the people who have mental health issues and addiction issues. I mean, every case is individual and very complicated. Are there any funds that might come down the pike from the federal or state government? Because Mayor Garcetti has said this isn't just an LA County problem, this is a regional problem.
Right. Well, the state did give us, I believe, $600 million. And that was towards the end of the year, so that hasn't really had its full effect. But Mayor Garcetti is asking for more money. And I think that Gavin Newsom, our new governor, is going to be amenable to that because he's dealt with the same problem in San Francisco.
Right.
San Francisco has had, proportionate to their population, a very similar problem to our problem.
It's about
and
100.
It also hasn't really budged.
Right.
They also went up this year.
It's also about 130,000 people statewide. How many people do we know in Orange County, San Bernardino, Riverside County? Maybe not the exact number, but what is the data showing as trend-wise?
Well, they went up double digits, all of them. But they also improved. Another problem with the count and focusing on the count is that the methodology always slightly changes. And also in Southern California, at least 2/3 of the homeless people do live in the streets. And as you can imagine, that's very hard to have an accurate count.
Absolutely.
In other places, most people live in shelters, and those can be much more exact counts.
You can't help but drive around the streets and see it and think it. I mean, it looks as bad or worse than it's ever looked before.
Yeah.
Gail, thanks so much. It's a hard subject, but we appreciate your reporting on it.
Okay, thank you for having me, Lisa.
Gail will have more on the story when the report is released May 31st. And you could read more about it at latimes.com.